attention. Have you ever thought that some lies are whispered in secret, but the most devastating ones are defended in public? This is not a simple story of infidelity. It is a saga about the weaponization of trust and the blinding arrogance of a man who had everything. Are you ready for a twist that will leave you breathless? Keep reading. Arthur Sullivan was a titan of New York industry, a billionaire who believed he could control every narrative, including that of the woman he led by the arm, who was not his wife. To the world, he dismissed the gossips as malicious, defending his mistress's honor. What he never anticipated was that his pregnant wife, Sophie, wasn't just listening. She was collecting evidence. This is the story of how a scorned woman not only got revenge, she orchestrated a fall so spectacular, so public, it brought an entire empire to its knees. The Sullivan estate in Southampton, the Hamptons, was less a home and more a monument to calculated success. Impeccable, computer-generated looking gardens stretched to the calm waters of the bay. Inside the house, a symphony of minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows, immaculate white walls adorned with towering modern art, and furniture so exquisitely uncomfortable it could only be expensive. It was a house designed to be photographed for magazines, not to be lived in. And lately, Sophie Sullivan felt more like part of the decor than a resident. At 7 months pregnant, she felt a profound disconnect from the sterile perfection surrounding her. Her body was a landscape of change, swelling, moving, and beautifully unpredictable, in a home where every coaster and cushion had its designated, immutable place. Her husband, Arthur Sullivan, was the architect of this world. A tech magnate who had worked his way from a middle-class family in rural Ohio to the pinnacle of New York's financial world. Arthur worshipped at the altar of control. His company, Sullivan Innovations, was his first child, and its meteoric rise was a testament to his ruthless drive and his inability to accept anything less than perfection. Their marriage, once a passionate partnership, had slowly chilled into a business arrangement. He provided the golden cage. She was the beautiful bird he kept inside it, a testament to his good taste and a hostess for his endless parade of investors and sycophants. Sophie, a former forensic accountant with a mind as sharp as glass, had willingly left her career to support him. She had believed in the dream they were building. Now she wandered their empty hallways, the silence broken only by the phantom hum of her phone and the growing distance in her husband's eyes. The whispers began, as they always do, online. It was a Tuesday morning. The sunlight streaming through the panoramic windows did nothing to warm the chill that had settled deep in Sophie's bones. She was scrolling through her tablet, looking for articles on organic baby food, when a headline from the notorious gossip blog, Vargas Verdict, by Pilar Vargas, caught her eye. Tech titan Arthur Sullivan's new asset. Sources say Sullivan Innovations CEO has been spotted cozying up to a mysterious brunette across NYC. Trouble in Southampton paradise for his pregnant wife? The accompanying photo was blurry, taken from a distance. It showed the back of Arthur's head, his distinctive dark, silver-streaked hair unmistakable. He was leaning close to a woman in a dimly lit bar, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. The woman was facing away, but her silhouette was slender, sleek, draped in a silk dress that shimmered even in the low light. Sophie's heart did not break. It paralyzed. It was the cold, hard confirmation of a fear she had refused to name for months. The nights he had called board meetings, the sudden business trips to Chicago, the scent of a perfume that wasn't hers, clinging faintly to his jackets. When Arthur came home that afternoon, he was the picture of the doting husband, a performance he had perfected. He kissed her cheek, his lips cool and brief, before placing a hand on her swollen belly. "How are my two favorite people doing?" he asked in his low, rehearsed murmur. Sophie held up the tablet. She did not speak. She just watched his face. For a split second, a flicker of something, annoyance, fear, crossed his features before the mask of charming nonchalance snapped back into place. He snorted, a theatrical sound. "Oh, for God's sake, Sophie. Pilar Vargas, that woman is a vulture. She makes a living inventing scandals. You can't be taking this seriously." "Your hand is on her back, Arthur," Sophie said, her voice eerily steady. "You're in a bar, not a boardroom." "That's Martina Shaw," he said, waving a dismissive hand, as if the name should mean nothing and everything all at once. "She's an art consultant, a potential client for a new philanthropic technology venture I'm exploring. The photo is completely out of context. We were at a crowded gallery event, and I was merely guiding her through the throng. Vargas's photographer must have waited for the perfect moment to create a fiction. Martina Shaw. The name sounded like a novel character, all silk and smoke. Sophie had heard him mention her once or twice, a fleeting reference to an incredibly well-connected new contact in the art world. "You never told me you were courting new clients for a philanthropic venture," Sophie said, her gaze unwavering. "It's in the early stages. Didn't want to bore you with the details until it was more concrete." He gently deflected. "Sophie, listen to me. You're pregnant. You're emotional. It's understandable, but letting this kind of trash affect you is beneath you. It's beneath us. I'm building an empire for this family, for our son. Do you really think I would jeopardize that for a meaningless fling?" His words were a masterclass in manipulation. He had acknowledged her pregnancy, framed her valid concern as hormonal instability, and redirected her attention to his grand purpose. All in one breath. The old Sophie might have folded. She might have apologized for her lack of faith. But the woman sitting before him now was different. The vision, the life growing inside her, had ignited a primal protective instinct that was more powerful than any lie he could conjure. "I see," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. She closed the tablet and placed it on the marble coffee table. "Well, I'm glad you cleared that up." Arthur smiled, a triumphant, predatory gleam in his eyes. He believed he had won. He leaned in to kiss her again, but she shifted slightly, and his lips met the air just beside her temple. He didn't seem to notice, or perhaps chose not to. "Good," he said, adjusting his tie. "Now forget about it. David Hayes is coming over for dinner to discuss Q3 projections. I need you to be the brilliant, charming hostess you always are." As he left the room, leaving her alone in the cavernous, sunlit space, Sophie felt a cold resolve settle over her. He had not only lied, he had insulted her intelligence. He saw her as a fragile, emotional burden, not a partner. He had mentioned Martina Shaw's name so casually, so dismissively, that it could only mean one thing. She was important, and if Arthur was protecting her so fiercely, it was because there was something dangerous to protect. Sophie picked up her phone, her fingers moving with a purpose they hadn't held in years. She didn't navigate to a gossip site or a friend's social media page. She opened a secure browser and typed a series of keywords, her old forensic accounting instincts flooding back to life. Martina Shaw, art consultant. NYC. The game had changed. Arthur believed he was managing a small marital crisis with his pregnant wife. He had no idea he had just declared war on the one person who knew exactly how to dismantle the pristine, perfect world he had built. One verifiable fact at a time. The snake had been named, and Sophie was now ready to follow its trail, no matter how deep into the darkness it led. The golden cage was about to become a battlefield. A golden cage about to become a battlefield. Do you think Sophie is going too far? Or is this exactly what Arthur deserves? Leave your opinion in the comments. The Guildhall, the public defense, the annual patrons of the Arts Gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was the glittering highlight of the New York social calendar. A night where old money and new tech collided in a blinding flash of diamonds. For Arthur and Sophie Sullivan, it was a command performance. This year, Sullivan Innovations was the lead sponsor, and a massive banner with the company's sleek, minimalist logo was draped behind the stage in the Great Hall. Sophie felt like she was suiting up for combat. She chose her gown with strategic precision, a flowing silk dress in a deep emerald color that didn't conceal her pregnancy, but celebrated it, draping her figure in a way that was both regal and defiant. Her hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and the famous Sullivan diamonds, a wedding gift from Arthur, felt cold and heavy around her neck. Looking in the mirror, she didn't see a victim. She saw a queen surveying her realm, even though she knew a usurper was already inside the castle walls. Arthur buzzed with a near-manic energy, his charm turned up to maximum. "You look stunning, Sophie," he murmured, his hand finding her lower back as they exited the black car and stepped into a maelstrom of camera flashes. Absolutely radiant. They won't be able to talk about anything else. Sophie knew he was right, but not for the reasons he thought. His praise was a tool, a way to ensure she played her part. Tonight, her role was that of the adored pregnant wife, a living, breathing symbol of his stability and good fortune. The hall was a sea of tuxedos and couture gowns. The air hummed with forced laughter and the clinking of champagne flutes. They worked their way through the crowd, Arthur shaking hands and accepting accolades, while Sophie smiled serenely, her mind a buzzing calculator of observations. She watched as people's eyes flicked from her belly to Arthur's face, searching for cracks in the facade. The Vargas verdict article had made the rounds. Everyone there had read it. They were talking with Arthur's business partner, David Hayes, when it happened. David, a sharp, no-nonsense man, who had always treated Sophie with genuine respect, was mid-sentence about market volatility when a hush fell over their small circle. A woman had approached them, her movement so fluid and deliberate, she seemed to glide. It was tall and impossibly slender, draped in a blood-red gown that left little to the imagination. Her hair was a cascade of dark, glossy curls, and her large, doe-like eyes were fixed on Arthur with an expression of manufactured vulnerability. It was Martina Shaw. In person, she was even more striking than Sophie had imagined. "Arthur," she said. Her voice, a husky whisper, clearly intended to be overheard. She placed a delicate, long-fingered hand on the arm of his tuxedo. "I just saw Pilar Vargas lurking by the bar, and I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. What she wrote was so vile, so untrue. I've barely been able to leave my apartment." Arthur immediately shifted into protector mode. He covered her hand with his posture changing from CEO to guardian. "Martina, don't give that woman a second thought. She's irrelevant. We're all fine." He then turned to Sophie, his expression a mix of false nonchalance and clear warning. "Sophie, darling, remember I mentioned Martina Shaw, an art consultant I've been advising." He had framed it as him advising her, a subtle but significant spin. Sophie met Martina's gaze. The woman's eyes were not filled with panic. They were cold, assessing, and triumphant. This was not a chance encounter. This was a calculated strike, designed to happen here, in the most public of arenas. "Of course," Sophie said, her voice smooth as ice. "It's a pleasure to finally meet the woman from the photograph." The dart, though subtle, landed. A flash of irritation crossed Martina's face before she quickly replaced it with a look of wounded innocence. She turned her teary eyes back to Arthur. "I'm so sorry, Sophie. I can't imagine how you must view this. Arthur has been nothing but a gentleman, a true friend, helping me navigate a very complex acquisition for my portfolio. That photograph was a moment he offered support after a difficult negotiation. That it's been twisted into something so sordid is just devastating. Every word was a polished lie. She was painting herself as the victim, a professional woman defamed by a jealous press, and by extension, a potentially jealous wife. She was cornering Sophie, forcing her to either accept the lie with grace or make a scene and prove Pilar Vargas's narrative correct. Arthur, completely taken in, fell fully for it. "Sophie understands perfectly," he said, his tone leaving no room for debate. He squeezed Martina's hand. "You are a respected professional, and I will not allow your reputation to be sullied by associating with me, nor will I allow my wife to be unsettled by unfounded rumors." He was defending her, openly, in front of his business partner, and a dozen straining ears. He was choosing his mistress's reputation over his wife's dignity. The humiliation was a physical blow, a scorching wave of shame and rage that washed over Sophie. She could feel the stares, the looks of pity, the satisfied smirks. In that moment, she was no longer Sophie Sullivan, the brilliant ex-accountant. She was the pregnant wife, the obstacle, the cliché. David Hayes cleared his throat, sensing the imminent explosion. "Arthur, the auction is about to begin. We should probably find our seats." "Yes, right," Arthur finally said, releasing Martina's hand, though his eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. "Martina, you must stay and enjoy the evening. Keep your head high." "Thank you, Arthur. You're too kind," she whispered, before giving Sophie a small, almost imperceptible smirk, and melting back into the crowd as they walked toward their front-of-house table. The silence between them was thick, suffocating. Arthur leaned in, his voice a low, furious hiss, meant only for her. "What was that? The woman from the photograph? Are you trying to make a scene?" Sophie stopped dead, forcing him to turn and face her. The carefully selected smiles of New York's elite surrounded them, but in their small bubble, the truth lay bare. "A scene?" she whispered back. Her voice trembled with rigidly controlled fury. "You're the one making a scene, Arthur. You just publicly comforted your mistress, all while telling me how I should feel about it. You humiliated me. You humiliated our family, this child." She placed a hand on her stomach, all to soothe the manufactured tears of a woman who orchestrated that entire encounter. "She's a victim here, Sophie. Her reputation is at stake," he retorted, his face flushing. "Her reputation?" Sophie gave a short, disbelieving laugh, devoid of humor. "What about mine? Or do I no longer have one, now that my only job is to carry your heir and smile at your galas?" The cruelty of her words hit him. He recoiled slightly, his anger momentarily replaced by surprise. But the moment passed, and the defensive walls went back up. "That is unfair, and you know it. You're overwhelmed. We will discuss this at home, not here." He turned and walked toward their table, leaving her alone for a moment in the middle of the great hall. The flash of a camera popped somewhere to her right. Pilar Vargas had her picture for tomorrow's column. Sophie took a deep, steadying breath. The humiliation still burned, but beneath it, a new feeling was taking root. Crystal clear, cold, and absolute certainty. He would not get away with this. She would not be the hysterical, weeping wife. She would not let him gaslight her into believing she was crazy. He had made his choice in front of everyone. Now she would make hers in the quiet, methodical shadows, where she did her best work. As she sat down at the table, forcing a placid smile for the people seated around them, Sophie made a silent promise. She would uncover every lie Martina Shaw had told. She would find every skeleton. And she wouldn't expose it to Arthur. she would expose it to the world. The Cold War has begun. Do you think Sophie is right to be suspicious of Martina? And what do you think Arthur will do when he finds out the truth? Comment below and subscribe so you don't miss the climax. The digital trenches, the assault on the narrative. The days following the gala were a study in Cold Warfare. Arthur and Sophie moved around their cavernous home like two opposite magnets, maintaining a carefully calibrated distance. He was superficially solicitous, constantly asking about her health and the babies, a transparent attempt to paper over the chasm he had opened between them. He treated her like a patient, a delicate thing to be managed. Sophie, in turn, played her part. She was serene, compliant, and completely distant. She knew that any display of anger or suspicion would be dismissed as hormonal hysteria, a weapon he would use to invalidate her. Her calm was her camouflage. Her real life began after midnight. Once Arthur's steady breathing filled the master suite, Sophie slipped out of bed and headed to the unused home office at the far end of the house. It was the one room Arthur never entered, a space filled with her old textbooks, files from her former career, and a high-end computer she had insisted on having when they moved in. He had called it a whim then. It was now her arsenal. The skills she had honed as a forensic accountant, tracking money, finding patterns in chaos, understanding that the digital world always leaves a ghost, came rushing back. She didn't start by looking for proof of the affair. An affair was a private pain. To defeat Martina and shock Arthur out of his delusion, she needed to attack the woman's entire public persona. She needed to prove she was a fraud, not just a homewrecker. Her first target was Martina Shaw, art consultant. The name itself sounded like a stage name. Sophie began by running corporate searches. There was no registered business under that name in New York, Boston, or any other likely state. No LLC, no Inc. Strange for a respected professional dealing in high-value acquisitions. Next, she searched for a digital footprint. Martina had a carefully curated Instagram account, filled with photos of herself at gallery openings, art auctions, and exclusive parties. Every post was a masterpiece of social climbing, tagging famous artists and wealthy patrons. But it was all surface, no substance. There was no professional website, no LinkedIn profile detailing her expertise, no published articles or interviews on her supposed expertise. Sophie called her best friend, Amelia Reed, a quick-witted obstetrician who had been her rock during the pregnancy. "It's like she didn't exist before 2022, Sophie said, her voice low as she paced the office, the screen glowing in the darkness. Her entire online presence springs fully formed 3 years ago. Before that, nothing. People reinvent themselves all the time, Soph, Amelia said cautiously. Maybe she changed her name, married and divorced. I thought that, Sophie replied, clicking on a new set of search results. But there are no marriage or divorce records under that name. It's cleaner than a new identity in a witness protection program. It's artificial. The first thread appeared a few nights later. Sophie had set up alerts for Martina's name on social media. A post from a tiny independent gallery in downtown Brooklyn tagged her in a group photo from an opening 2 years prior. In the comments, an old acquaintance had written, "Great to see you, Sarah. You look gorgeous." Sarah. It was a small thing, a digital breadcrumb. But for Sophie, it was a seismic event. She cross-referenced the commenter's profile, finding more photos of them with Martina, or Sarah, dating back 5 or 6 years. In these old photos, the woman looked different. Her hair was lighter, her clothes less expensive, her ambition less cloaked in a veneer of class. The name in the old comments was Sarah Jenkins. A search for Sarah Jenkins in NYC turned up a few minor records, a couple of parking tickets, a rental application for a small apartment in Queens. But a nationwide search for Sarah Jenny Jenkins, cross-referenced with public records databases Sophie paid a steep subscription fee to access, cracked open a Pandora's box. Sarah Jenny Jenkins was from a dusty town in Central Florida. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a seamstress. There was no old money, no European finishing school, no inherited art collection. There was, however, a string of petty claims, court judgments in Orlando for unpaid rent and credit card debts. And then Sophie found the first big one, a lawsuit filed in Miami 8 years ago. The plaintiff was a retired film producer in his 60s. The defendant was Sarah Jenkins. The charge? Fraud. According to court documents, Sarah had presented herself as an aspiring actress and interior designer, convincing the producer to invest over $100,000 into a non-existent interior design business. She had vanished the day after the last bank transfer cleared. The case was eventually dismissed when she could not be located to be served. Sophie gasped. It was a pattern, a modus operandi. Find a rich, older, perhaps lonely man. Create a persona that appealed to his ego. Isolate him. Drain his resources and vanish. With Arthur, she had clearly refined her methods, aiming not just for a payout, but a complete hostile takeover of a man's life. The art consultant persona was her most ambitious creation yet. She began connecting the dots, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She tracked Sarah Jenkins's movement from Florida to Miami, and then to LA. In LA, she found another ghost, a woman named Serafina Petrov, a supposed Russian heiress who had wormed her way into the yachting community before disappearing amidst rumors of a bad real estate deal gone wrong. The timeline matched, the description matched, the method matched. It was all there, a trail of discarded identities and financial wreckage. Martina Shaw was not a person. She was a meticulously constructed brand, a special-purpose vehicle for fraud. The weight of it all pressed down on Sophie. This was so much bigger than an affair. Arthur wasn't just cheating. He was being conned. His arrogance, his belief that he was the smartest man in any room, had made him the perfect target. He was so certain of his own judgment that he couldn't see the predator right in front of him, the one whispering in his ear how brilliant and misunderstood he was. Amelia's voice pulled her back to the present. "Soph, you've been quiet a while. Did you find anything?" Sophie leaned back in her chair, the first streaks of dawn beginning to slash the sky. She felt exhausted, but also electrified. The humiliation of the gala felt distant, replaced by a cold, hard purpose. "I found everything, Amelia," she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "I found the thread, and I'm going to pull on it until her entire world unravels." She wasn't fighting for her marriage anymore. She wasn't even sure she wanted it. She was fighting for the truth, for her son's future, and for the part of herself that Arthur had tried to make her forget. The sharp, relentless woman who never ever left a lie unpunished. Fraud as a work of art? Martina Shaw seems to be a master of it. What do you think of Sophie's tenacity? Do you think she'll succeed in masking the phantom? Like and share if you're as hooked as we are. The final strike. The public deposition. Martina Shaw was a masterful strategist. She knew her greatest asset wasn't her beauty, but her ability to control the narrative. Sensing the shift in the atmosphere at the Sullivan estate, Sophie's icy politeness, Arthur's subtle tension, she decided to launch a preemptive strike. She didn't wait for Sophie to act. She painted Sophie as the aggressor. Her campaign began with a series of frantic, tearful phone calls to Arthur. "I don't know what to do, Arthur. She's making me follow," she would cry over the phone, her voice a perfect symphony of fear and fragility. A man in a dark car was parked outside my apartment all day yesterday. I'm terrified." There was no man, of course, but the seed was planted. A few days later, another call. A private investigator called my gallery owner asking strange questions about my credentials. He said he was hired by Sophie Sullivan. "She's trying to ruin my reputation, Arthur. My whole business is based on trust. If people think I'm being investigated, I'm finished. Why is she doing this to me? I thought she understood." Every lie was a carefully aimed dart, designed to trigger Arthur's deepest insecurities and his most potent instincts. His desire to be a protector, his disdain for what he viewed as petty domestic drama, and his growing impatience with Sophie's emotionalism. He saw Martina as a professional colleague, a brilliant woman, being unfairly attacked, and Sophie as the irrational, hormonal wife succumbing to unfounded jealousy. The confrontation Sophie had dreaded and prepared for came on a Sunday afternoon. Rain lashed the giant living room windows, mirroring the storm brewing inside. Arthur had been silent all day, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. He finally cornered her as she was organizing newly delivered baby clothes in the nursery, a room of soft yellows and whites that felt like a sanctuary. "We need to talk," he said, his voice stripped of any warmth. He closed the door behind him, locking them in with the scent of fresh paint and an impending disaster. "About your harassment of Martina Shaw," he snapped, abandoning all pretense. "Hiring a private investigator? Having her followed? What the hell do you think you're doing, Sophie?" Sophie turned to face him slowly. She hadn't hired any investigator. She was too meticulous to delegate such a task and risk exposure. Martina had invented it, feeding Arthur the very conclusion Sophie had hoped to avoid. "I haven't hired anyone, Arthur," she said calmly. "That is a fiction she has created to play the victim." "A fiction?" he scoffed, taking a step closer. His 6-foot figure seemed to dominate the quiet room. "She's terrified. She's a single woman, and you're using our resources to intimidate her. It's despicable. I thought you were better than this. I know you're pregnant, and your hormones are all over the place, but this is crazy. It's paranoid." The psychological gaslighting was so textbook, it was almost laughable. He was using her pregnancy, the very thing that had made her stronger and clearer than ever, as a tool to dismiss her. "My hormones are not the issue here," Sophie said, her voice dropping to a steely undertone. "Your infidelity is the issue. Your blatant disregard for me and our marriage is the issue. The fact that a con artist is making a fool of you is the issue." The word con artist hung in the air between them. Arthur's face, already flushed with anger, turned a darker shade. "How dare you? She is a respected businesswoman, a brilliant mind, and she has become a dear friend. You know nothing about her. You're simply lashing out because you feel threatened." "A dear friend," Sophie challenged, finally letting her composure crack. "Friends don't call you at midnight. Friends don't stand by while you publicly humiliate your pregnant wife. Friends don't let you buy them Cartier bracelets." Arthur flinched as if struck. "I bought her a gift for her birthday, a token of my esteem. You're twisting everything. You're building a conspiracy in your head because you can't stand the idea that I might have a connection with another woman that is purely platonic and intellectual. It is not platonic, and you know it." Sophie's voice rose. The fury she had suppressed for weeks finally erupted. "Open your eyes, Arthur. That woman is a ghost. She has no verifiable history, no registered business, nothing. She's feeding you a story, and you're swallowing it whole because it flatters your ego." "Enough!" he roared, his voice bouncing off the cheerful animal-stenciled walls. "You will stop this immediately. You will not contact her. You will not investigate her. You will leave her alone. Understand?" My entire philanthropic venture is tied up with her contacts. You are jeopardizing millions of dollars and the future of the Sullivan Innovations charitable arm over your petty, unfounded jealousy." He had completely absorbed Martina's narrative. He truly believed Sophie was the threat, the irrational element that could cause his carefully constructed world to tumble. He saw Martina as an asset and his wife as a liability. Sophie looked at him, and for the first time she felt nothing but a deep, hollow pity. He wasn't a monster. He was a fool, a brilliant, powerful, arrogant fool who was so blinded by a cheap fantasy that he couldn't see the truth right in front of him. "I understand," she said, her voice suddenly quiet and defeated. It was the performance he needed to see. The fight drained out of her posture. Her shoulders slumped, and she looked down at her hands. "You're right. I'm sorry. It's just, I'm not myself lately." Arthur's relief was immediate and palpable. His posture softened, and the anger in his eyes was replaced by condescending sympathy. He stepped forward and placed his hands on her shoulders. "I know, sweetheart," he said, his voice turning gentle. "It's a lot to deal with. The pregnancy, the stress. I understand. Just trust me on this. Martina is a good person, a friend. Let's not let this ugliness come between us." He believed he had won. He had quelled the rebellion, managed the situation. He kissed her forehead, a gesture of benevolent possession. "Get some rest. I'll have dinner sent up." He left the nursery, closing the door softly behind him, leaving her in the cloying silence. Sophie stood still for a full minute. The moment he was gone, her spine straightened. The defeated look vanished from her face, replaced by an expression cold and hard as a diamond. His defense of Martina had been more passionate, more absolute than she had ever imagined. He had threatened his own company, his own legacy, to protect her. He had called his own wife crazy to preserve his mistress's lies. He had not just drawn a line in the sand. He had built a fortress on it and dared her to cross it. And Sophie knew, with chilling certainty, that she wouldn't just cross it. She would burn the fortress to the ground, with everyone inside. He wanted her to stop. Fine. She would stop investigating in secret. The next time he heard about her findings, it wouldn't be from a hysterical wife in a nursery. It would be on a forum so public, so devastating, he would have no choice but to see the truth. Sophie's false surrender provided her with exactly what she needed: time and a false sense of security for her enemies. Arthur, believing he had pacified her, redoubled his efforts with Martina, both personally and professionally. He now openly championed the Sullivan Shaw Arts Initiative, a charitable foundation that existed, as far as Sophie could discern, only on paper and in Martina's bank account. He channeled a significant amount of seed capital to a holding company Martina had established, a company registered in the Cayman Islands. While Arthur was busy being the magnanimous benefactor, Sophie was deep in the digital trenches, assembling an arsenal of truth so damning it would be irrefutable. The discovery of Sarah Jenkins was only the beginning. Sophie needed to connect that past to Martina Shaw's present, in a way that no one, not even a love-blinded Arthur, could deny. Her breakthrough came from an unexpected source: social media vanity. On Martina's carefully curated Instagram, amidst photos of Christie's auctions and ski trips to Aspen, was a photo of her with her beloved Russian wolfhound, Boris. It was a beautiful dog, and the post was filled with fawning comments. Following a hunch, Sophie hired a public records and genealogy specialist in Florida, giving her the name Sarah Jenkins and a simple instruction: find any record of pet ownership. 2 days later, she received an email. Sarah Jenkins had owned a registered Russian wolfhound for 7 years. His name was Bear. He was microchipped. The specialist provided the chip number. Sophie then contacted a network of high-end vets in NYC under the guise of an executive assistant, seeking the best care for her boss's new dog. Posing as Martina Shaw's assistant, she called a clinic in Manhattan's Upper East Side. "Yes, Ms. Shaw is a new client," she said coolly into the phone. "She'd like to transfer her dog Boris's file. She's not sure if you have the microchip number on file, but I have it here if it helps." She read the microchip number belonging to Sarah Jenkins. The receptionist paused for a moment. "Oh yes, I see it. The chip is registered under a Sarah Jenkins. Is that Ms. Shaw's previous name?" "It is," Sophie lied softly. "From a previous marriage." Checkmate. She now had a concrete, physical link between the two identities, provided by Martina herself. A detail so small, so sentimental, the master manipulator had overlooked it. With this link established, Sophie worked backward, filling in the gaps of Martina's fraudulent life. She discovered the web of lies was more intricate than she could have imagined. Martina had not only faked her name and background, she had fabricated an entire academic and professional history. The Sorbonne degree, listed on a charity event bio. The university had no record of her. The Louvre internship. A total fiction. The art consulting angle was the most brilliant part of the scam. It provided the perfect cover. The art world was notoriously opaque, a place where multi-million-dollar deals could be brokered with a handshake and where provenance and reputation were everything. By creating an alter ego of old-world class and deep knowledge, she could operate without the typical scrutiny of a financial professional. Sophie's accounting skills went into overdrive. She began investigating the Cayman Islands Investment Fund, where Arthur had funneled the seed capital. It was a classic shell company. Designed for one purpose, to make money disappear. But Martina had made a mistake. To open the account, she had needed a signatory, a director, on paper, and for that, she had used a former associate. A man whose name Sophie found listed as a co-defendant in a minor real estate fraud case in Miami from 5 years prior. A case that had also involved a certain Serafina Petrov. The man's name was Richard Vargas. A quick search revealed he was a low-level grifter, currently residing in a cheap apartment in the Bronx. Not the loyal type. For $5,000, wired from a specially created anonymous account, Richard Vargas was willing to talk. Not to Sophie directly, but to a lawyer she hired for a single, recorded consultation. The transcript of that call was the final nail in the coffin. "Jenny, yeah, I know Jenny Jenkins," Richard's voice crackled on the recording. "Or Sarah, or Martina, or whatever she's calling herself this week. She's a genius, I'll give her that. Finds these rich guys who think they're hotshots, and becomes their perfect fantasy. She told me about this new one, the tech guy, Sullivan. Said he was the biggest fish she ever hooked. Said he was so arrogant he'd believe anything she told him. The plan was never to stay. It was to set up this fake foundation, have him seed a few million. And then, poof, she'd be on a beach in the Canary Islands, and he'd be explaining to his board where their charitable donations went." The lawyer pressed him. "So, the Sullivan-Shaw Arts Initiative is not a legitimate venture?" Richard gave a rough, ugly laugh. "It's as legitimate as her last name. It's a bank account. That's all. The only art she's interested in is the art of the con." Sophie sat in her dark office listening to the recording, and a profound calm settled over her. She had everything. The name changes, the prior lawsuits, the fabricated credentials, the link between her identities via the dog's microchip, the shell company, and now a sworn testimony from a co-conspirator detailing the entire plan. She carefully compiled every single piece of evidence into a single, devastating presentation. Bank excerpts, court documents, screenshots, audio files, academic registrar letters. It was a forensic accountant's masterpiece, a meticulous, brutal vivisection of a life built on lies. She looked at the calendar. The annual Sullivan Innovations shareholder and press conference was in 1 week. It was Arthur's favorite day of the year, a chance for him to stand on a stage under bright lights and regale the world with his success and his vision for the future. He had already told her he planned to officially announce the Sullivan Shaw Arts Initiative at the event, with Martina in the front row. He was planning to introduce his brilliant new philanthropic project to the world. He was going to celebrate the woman who had captivated him, the sharp mind he so admired. He had no idea that he was, in fact, setting the stage for his own public execution. Sophie would let him build the set, turn on the lights, and invite the audience. She would simply provide the final act. Here comes the climax. Sophie has the evidence and a master plan. Will she be able to execute it in front of all the press? Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss a second of this public revenge. The gavel falls. The public vivisection. The main ballroom of the Hilton Midtown was electric with anticipation. Hundreds of shareholders, journalists, and tech industry analysts filled the seats, their faces turned toward the sleek, minimalist stage. A massive screen displayed the Sullivan Innovations logo, pulsing softly like a tranquil blue heart. This was Arthur Sullivan's cathedral, and he was about to deliver the sermon. Backstage, Arthur felt the familiar pre-show adrenaline. He straightened his custom Tom Ford suit, ran a hand through his hair, and smiled at his reflection. Today was a triumph. Q3 numbers were spectacular, and he was about to announce the philanthropic initiative that would cement his legacy, not just as a titan, but as a visionary. He glanced out at the auditorium's front row, where a seat was reserved for Martina Shaw. She was already there, a vision in white, looking the elegant part. Her presence filled him with a sense of rightness, a confirmation that he was on the correct path. He had barely spoken to Sophie all week. She had been quiet, withdrawn, which he had interpreted as her sulking, but finally accepting his authority. She had told him she didn't feel well enough to attend, and he had been secretly relieved. Her presence would have been a complication, a dark cloud on his perfect day. The event began as expected. Arthur took the stage to thunderous applause. He was a masterful speaker, charismatic and convincing. He led the audience through the company's successes, unveiling new products and painting a dazzling picture of the future. David Hayes sat on the stage with the other board members, looking proud, but also, if one looked closely, deeply fatigued. But innovation isn't just about profit, Arthur said, his voice ringing with passion as he reached the climax of his speech. It's about purpose. It's about giving back. For months, I have been working with a truly brilliant partner, a visionary in the world of arts and philanthropy, to create something truly special. It is an immense honor to officially announce the Sullivan Shaw Arts Initiative. A photo of Arthur and a smiling Martina appeared on the giant screen behind him. The audience applauded politely. Martina, in the front row, touched her heart and gave Arthur a radiant, thankful smile. This multi-million-dollar initiative, Arthur continued, will fund underrepresented artists and bring arts education to the communities that need it most. It's a testament to what can be achieved when technology and art, when vision and passion come together. He was about to proceed when he noticed a small commotion at the side of the stage. A technician was speaking urgently to the floor manager. Arthur paused. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face, and then a new voice cut through the ballroom sound system. It was quiet, clear, and female. That's a beautiful sentiment, Arthur. Every head in the room swiveled, following the slow, purposeful walk down the center aisle. It was Sophie Sullivan. She wasn't dressed in the somber tones of a victim. She wore a striking cobalt blue power suit, tailored to accommodate her pregnancy. Her face was serene, her expression unreadable. She held a small remote control in her hand. Arthur froze, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. "Sophie, what the hell are you doing?" he hissed. His voice was accidentally caught by the mic before he pulled it away. Martina's smile faltered. Her eyes widened with panic. Sophie reached the small set of stairs at the side of the stage and ascended gracefully. Event staff, too stunned to intervene, simply watched. She walked to the center of the stage, stopping feet away from her husband. "I apologize for the interruption, everyone," she said into the microphone, her voice steady and strong, betraying no hint of nerves. "My husband is right. It is a testament to what can be achieved when vision and passion come together. But I believe in full transparency, especially when it comes to charitable efforts. So I would like to add a few details to this exciting announcement." She clicked the remote. The image of Arthur and Martina on the screen faded, replaced by an 8-year-old Barcelona courthouse mugshot. It was a younger, harder-looking Martina. Below it, in large lettering, read, "Sarah Jenkins, defendant. Case MIA 45B729. Charge, fraud." A collective gasp swept the audience. Journalists were already scrambling. Cameras flashed, fingers flew across keyboards. Martina leaped to her feet, her face pale. "This is insane! It's a lie! That's not me!" Arthur looked wildly from the screen to Sophie, his mind unable to process what was happening. "Sophie, stop. Stop this right now." Sophie ignored them both. She clicked the remote again. A new slide appeared. A diagram showing a web of names. Sarah Jenkins, Serafina Petrov, Martina Shaw. All connected to a string of lawsuits and fraud allegations across 3 different states. "Martina Shaw is an invention," Sophie announced, her voice ringing with authority. "A persona created by a woman named Sarah Jenkins, a career con artist who preys on wealthy, powerful men." Click. The next slide showed the Cayman Islands incorporation documents. The Sullivan Shaw Arts Initiative is not a foundation. It is a bank account in the Cayman Islands, designed to launder the seed capital my husband has so generously provided. Arthur looked frantically from the screen to Martina, who was now trembling, her mask of sophistication shattering. "Martina, what is this?" he stammered. The final click was the most damning. Sophie's voice was replaced by a rough audio recording that boomed out of the hall's speakers. It was Richard Vargas. Said he was the biggest fish she ever hooked. Said he was so arrogant he'd believe anything she told him. The plan was to have him seed a few million. And then, poof. The sound of Richard's ugly, rough laugh filled the stunned silence. That was the breaking point. Martina let out a strangled cry and bolted for the exit. But 2 uniformed police officers, whom Sophie had arranged to wait discreetly in the back of the room, stepped forward to intercept her. Her escape was cut off. On stage, Arthur finally understood. The full catastrophic weight of his foolishness crashed down on him. The affair, the lies he had believed, the public defense of a criminal, the gaslighting of his own wife. It all converged in one moment of pure, agonizing humiliation. He looked at Sophie, the calm, resolute woman standing across from him, and saw not his wife. He saw a stranger, a force of nature who had just publicly and systematically dismantled his entire world. The company's stock ticker, visible on a news screen at the side of the hall, already showed a terrifying, precipitous drop. Sophie turned away from the wreckage of her husband's face and addressed the audience one last time. "Sullivan Innovations is a company built on integrity," she said. Her voice softened slightly. "I have no doubt it will recover, But integrity requires truth, and today I felt it was my duty as a member of the Sullivan family to provide it. She placed the remote control on the lectern, gave one last brief nod to the stunned board members, and walked off the stage. She did not look at Arthur. She did not look at the chaos erupting in the hall as Martina was escorted away. She walked with her head held high through the sea of shocked faces and out the doors, into the clear, bright light of a future she had reclaimed for herself. The aftermath, the destruction and the legacy, the fallout was immediate and spectacular. The Sullivan case, as the media dubbed it, became a supernova of scandal. Sullivan Innovation stock plummeted by 40% overnight, and the board forced Arthur Sullivan to take an indefinite leave of absence. His image as a brilliant titan was shattered, replaced by the caricature of a fool and by a fraud artist. Martina Shaw, or Sarah Jenkins, faced a litany of federal charges. With Sophie's meticulous evidence, the case was airtight, and her glamorous life evaporated into the prospect of a long prison sentence. She was a footnote, the catalyst for the main story. The world's focus was on Sophie. She was hailed as a feminist icon. She was offered book deals and television interviews, but she refused them all. She hadn't done it for fame or for the #TeamSophie hashtags that trended for weeks. She had done it for her own peace, for her son's future, and for the simple, brutal need for truth. She filed for divorce the day after the conference. Arthur, a broken man, did not contest it. He sent a barrage of desperate apologies, begging for one last meeting. Sophie agreed to see him in her lawyer's cold, sterile office. He looked older, smaller, diminished by the public disgrace. "I'm sorry, Sophie," he said, his voice raspy. "More than I can ever express. I betrayed you. I was blinded by ego." Sophie listened, her expression calm. The man she had loved was a ghost. This stranger was someone she could never trust again. "I believe you're sorry, Arthur," she said, her voice even and firm. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you were humiliated. But you weren't sorry when you were lying to me. And you weren't sorry when you called me paranoid and hormonal. That is the truth of who you were in those moments, and that is something I can never forget." She took a deep, steady breath. "I don't hate you, but what I feel now is nothing. Our son will know who his father is. You can have a place in his life if you earn it, but you will no longer have a place in mine." The finality of her words was absolute. The divorce was settled swiftly. Sophie received a substantial, non-punitive settlement, enough to secure her and her son's independence forever. She didn't want his empire. She just wanted her freedom. She left Southampton and the cold glass house behind, buying a beautiful brownstone on a tree-lined street in Brooklyn Heights. She designed a warm, comfortable nursery and reconnected with friends like Amelia, who had been her unwavering support system. 2 months later, she gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy. She named him Nicholas, not a dynastic name to bind him to the Sullivan legacy, but a name that was all her own. Holding her son in the quiet morning light of their new home, Sophie felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She had walked through the fire, not to destroy her husband, but to save herself. The world would remember the scandal, but for Sophie, that was just the prologue. Her real story, the one that truly mattered, was just beginning. It would be the story of a mother and her son, of strength forged in betrayal, and of a woman who had finally found her own wings. This was a story about the corrosive power of deceit and the unbreakable strength of a woman who refused to be silenced. Sophie's journey shows us that the truth, when handled with intelligence and courage, is the most powerful weapon of all. What did you think of her methods? Was her public reveal an act of perfect justice or a step too far? Let us know your opinion in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who appreciates a story of strength and vindication. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss the next story we uncover. Thank you for joining us.